I can ask everybody just to mute themselves. I'm getting feedback from all over the place. All right. Now we're recording. So electrical shock. Water and electricity can be a deadly combination. The use of any electrical equipment can cause fatal shock if the equipment is not properly grounded and adequately maintained, or if care is not used by the operator. Electrically safe equipment as well as safe operating and maintenance practices are an absolute necessity. So we're plumbers. We deal with a lot of water, but we also have equipment that we need to plug into the wall. And you know, it's dangerous out there if we're not being careful and being aware of what's happening around us. So 7 steps to protect against electrical shock.
Okay, yay. Okay, let me back in.
Is to clear standing water. Any standing water, and make sure the operating area is as dry as possible. Do not operate electrical machinery. You know, we do it in a lot of restaurants, units that are flooded out, and, you know, there's water all over the ground. And, you know, we run in there, plug in the snake, and, you know, sometimes we're not watching. We end up dropping that cord on the ground. It's in the water. And, you know, it's your life right there you're putting on the line. You got to be very aware and know what's going on. Ensure receptacle is properly grounded. Properly grounded receptacle minimizes the risk. Don't assume that all 3-hole adapters are properly grounded. You know, the best defense against shock from faulty wiring is an electrical tester. You know, something like this. It's not that expensive. You know, a quick check with one of these, you know, to see if the outlet is bad or not is, you know, it could, you know, save your, you know, your equipment from any serious damage, but most importantly, it might just, you know, save your life. You know, not having a properly grounded machine, you know, that whole machine is now a, you know, you touch it, you're going to get shocked. Make sure your equipment has a GFCI. All modern drain cleaning machines come equipped with ground fault current interrupters, or GFCIs, also known as GFIs, incorporated into their electrical cords. Never operate a drain cleaning machine without a working GFCI. If it is your primary defense against electrocution. So having these kinds of things, you know, it'll end up tripping the circuit, and, you know, it kind of saves you from getting electrocuted. Number four, check your electrical cord and extension cords. Sometimes your machine's not going to reach the outlet, so you got to add an extension cord. So, you know, you want to make sure you check your extension cord, make sure it's, you know, it's got a good end on it. There's no cuts, frays, and stuff like that. And, you know, if it is in there, I mean, you'd probably want to spend the money to just replace it, or, you know, properly repair it. Number 5, check your cable machine foot pedal. Manufacturers of drain cleaning machinery have stopped using electrically activated foot pedals for controlling the machine. They now use pneumatic or air-operated pedals, which reduce the risk of electrical current coming in contact with water. If your machine has an electrical foot pedal, change it out immediately. Manufacturers offer conversion kits to change electrical foot pedals to air. So these are the types of foot pedals that, you know, we see every day on our snake machines. We do use a electrical foot pedal, which is on our Pacote. And, you know, we just got to be aware that, I mean, that's pretty much all we got for that machine. But, you know, just take notice of, you know, where you're setting it down, you know, because it is an electrical foot pedal, but that is the only one that we use out there in the field. But if you guys do have an electric pedal for your snake, get that thing changed out. Number 6, checks for rubber covers on electrical switches and sealed electrical outlet boxes. Rubber covers help keep water away from the electrical components on the machine. Look for sealed electrical outlet boxes for the same reason. A motor shroud or a sealed motor is an ideal for the machine. if it's used outside or in areas where moisture is a problem. Remember, the idea is to keep the electricity and the water from coming in contact. So these are the motors we have on our snakes, and then they're kind of made to be out there in the rain if it needed. I mean, if you're working out there, I mean, they have that protective shield over it, but I wouldn't want to be snaking out there in the rain. I would probably want to try and cover it up or something like that. But if you do see any breaks or cracks, or your motor's exposed, try and get that fixed. When in doubt, step away. If you've taken all the precautions yet still receive a shock, I mean, even if it's the minimal lightest tingle, take it out of commission, get that thing fixed, find out what's wrong with it, because you're putting yourself at risk at trying to do things out there. So that's the 7 steps that we want to protect against in avoiding getting electrocuted. So before we move on, we got any questions?
I can make a comment. So I have removed on some of the devices on Maui the GFI that came with the snake, but I encourage to go get a separate receptacle that'll plug into the wall, and then you can plug into a GFI that you can use for pretty much anything, any extension cord. So it's just those devices tend to fail pretty quickly. But if it was removed, just make sure you have something that can actually trigger the GFI to switch off in the event of some kind of water contact or something.
Yeah. Anybody got any questions? We're going to move on. So moving on to hazard number 2, which is contracting disease or becoming ill. Beware of waterborne microorganisms and bloodborne pathogens. To avoid illness or disease, as a technician must be properly inoculated, wear appropriate safety gear, and follow all safety guidelines while performing drain and sewer cleaning to help avoid illness or disease. So what is a waterborne microorganism? It's a disease or illness caused by microscopic organisms like viruses and bacteria that are ingested through contaminated water or by coming in contact with, feces. What is a blood-borne pathogen? It's an infectious microorganism in human blood that can cause disease in humans. These pathogens include, but are not limited to, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and human immunodeficiency virus, like HIV. Needle sticks and other sharp-related injuries may expose workers to blood-borne pathogens. So that, this right here, it's having to deal with things that come from the blood of a human body. Hepatitis, HIV. I'm not going to say it's never happened, but it's something we need to be aware of. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in there. So we got to be very careful when we're sticking our hands in things, cleaning out a floor sink at a hospital or at a restaurant, in a back alley of a building. You never know if there's needles, glass, stuff like that. So what are some things that I do as a drain cleaner to expose myself to these diseases and illnesses? One is hydrojetting, that mist in the air when we're jetting. It's probably not something you want to keep your mouth open while you're doing. You got this big cloud of water in the air and, cabling a drain. This was, you're using it to clear a drain. It's in a flooded drain. You're bringing it out, you're putting it back in, and it's spinning. It's got water flying all over the place. Doing a drain repair. Some drain repairs you do over, you're doing an overhead repair, and somebody upstairs doesn't know you're below them, and you end up flushing on you. That's one way to be exposed to things like that. Removing or repairing drain fixtures, P-traps, toilets, things like that. As a service technician, it is my responsibility to ensure I take the adequate steps to minimize the likelihood I will become ill while on the job. Dealing with contaminated wastewater is not a major obstacle if we take our time and use proper safeguards to guard against becoming ill or contracting disease contracting disease while on the job. So here's 8 steps we recommend to be taken to avoid these things. One is to be properly inoculated. I'm not 100% what shots is needed out there, but hep shots, tetanus, stuff like that. Wearing safety glasses or a face shield to protect your face, your eyes, because you can contract these things through your mouth, your eyes. Wear heavy duty waterproof gloves. Use gloves under your sewer cleaning gloves. Avoid exposed skin by wearing coveralls. Don't touch your eyes, ears, or mouth while on a service call. Ensure all your cuts, your abrasions are properly covered before going on a service call. Wash your hands and arms after each service call with antibacterial soap, and just eating properly and exercising, like me. So keep in mind that waterborne microorganisms and bloodborne pathogens have basically 2 ways to enter your body. They enter through either an opening in the body or through a cut or abrasion in your skin. So it's your responsibility to ensure that you protect your health and take the preventative measures against becoming ill or contracting disease while cleaning drains and sewers. So it pretty much covers the coming in contact. I mean, right now we're dealing with COVID-19, and everybody, the world's been pretty much trained on how to try and avoid things like that. So, wearing a mask and stuff like that. But that's another thing we got to take into consideration, because now we're dealing with customers who don't even want to be around plumbers, but everybody needs a plumber. So also keep in mind of all these things that maybe some of you didn't even know about. Always have gloves on. You don't want to be sticking your hand in things, and you don't know about this cut you have on your finger, and you end up getting diseases and just becoming sick, and it's not worth it. So that pretty much covers hazard number 2 in contracting disease. We got any questions? All right, we're going to move on to number 3, chemical drain openers. Blindness and permanent skin damage are possible if exposed to some chemical drain openers. It is an absolute necessity to be prepared to deal with chemical drain openers on every service call. Appropriate safety gear must be worn, and proper safety precautions must be taken to help avoid injury. Why is drain openers hazardous? Most drain openers are made and based with acids, sulfuric and hydrochloric, and caustics. Both are dangerous and can cause severe injury or damage. How will you know if a customer used the drain openers? First of all, always assume they used it. When you walk in there, just always assume it. Ask the customer if any drain opener was used prior to your arrival. That, or you notice a very strong smell, burning ammonia, or you notice a bottle of drain opener in the home. Always be aware. I think we had one guy a few months ago who burned his whole arm, removing a shower trap, because the customer had poured Drano or something down the drain and ended up getting on our technician. So we got to be aware of it. If that thing had gotten into your eyes, he probably wouldn't be able to see today. Is using drain openers a good way to clear your drain? No, it isn't. For one, it's not safe. It's very bad for the drain systems, bad for the environment, and it may not even work. So, people are going to be pouring these things into their sinks, and it doesn't drain. Now you got this full sink full of acid, or your toilet, and then we got to come in there and we got to deal with it. How do I protect myself when dealing with drain openers standing in the drain? Using rubber gloves, eye protection, waterproof coveralls. Which takes us right into number 4. Do we have any questions on chemicals?
I'm pretty sure everybody or anybody who's cable to drain at some point has encountered somebody who's used Drano or some kind of chemical. Has anybody gotten burned or something from it? You want to share real quick, Justin?
Mine was a container of bleach that the customer kind of stacked on top of something out of the way. It was actually a commercial bar, you know, so you couldn't control it. Couldn't control the situation. It fell on me and burned me. It was pretty not a good situation.
Anybody else? Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
What should happen if you feel like you've been exposed to a drain cleaner and you feel it start, like what should the steps be?
I mean, first, I would say always use common sense. In that event, you're going to be flushing with water. Make sure you have some kind of soap or something to kind of wash off, light soap. But if it gets to the point where you feel like you need medical attention, get medical attention, you know, immediately. You know, I wouldn't mess around with that. A lot of people, different types of skins are a lot more, you know, susceptible to, you know, a burn versus, you know, not. I've had it on my hands before, and it does burn. Gets real itchy, burns, irritation. It eventually went away, but at the same time, you know, it could cause, you know, something pretty severe. So I would say flush it and just make sure you're flushed until you're comfortable. And if you can't get yourself comfortable, seek medical attention.
Yeah, because that could be a pretty bad burn.
You should report it no matter what, though. You know, make sure you report it to your supervisor regardless. And make sure the customer is aware of what just occurred. You know, a lot of times it's a homeowner. You know, everybody's trying to save a buck, and people don't realize. You go to the store, you see Drano, you think it works. And so for the most part, to the customer or homeowner, maybe it has worked a few times. It's cleared their drains, you know, saved them, you know, money from calling a plumber. But, you know, at some point, you know, the stoppage isn't something that, you know, is in the trap or something. And they end up dumping the shit down the drain, and now you're stuck with dealing with it. How do you remove it? That's actually the other question, right? How do you deal with it prior to cabling the drain? You know, and you would have to remove it by vacuum or some kind of device to get it out of the drain prior to snaking it, and just make sure you're ready to contain it before you're entering the drain, you know, with your machine. And then rinsing your cable, because that thing will eat your cable. You know, it'll just rust it. You know, it's really, really strong.
Real quickly, you know, take the time to educate your customer too. Most people think that because it's sold somewhere, that makes it okay. You know, no different than your tablets they throw in their tank. So always take the time to educate your customers, you know, then they know, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I thought, you know, because they sell it, it's cool. Thank you for telling me I won't do it anymore. And, you know, always take the time, no matter what you're doing, to educate your customer.
Would we say there's an additional charge for it?
It depends. You know, like me, when I used to do stuff, if someone wanted to stand over my shoulder and watch, I would encourage them to, but then I would tell them that I have to tack on a demonstration fee at the end of the job.
Do you do a dance and everything? No.
If they want it, if they're willing to pay for it, by all means.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I would say, because it is an extra step, you know, if you feel that it's going to cause or have more time involved in the task, because it is an additional task, if you look at it, you know, there should be something tacked onto it. And it doesn't have to be ridiculous. It's just something to, you know, kind of like Darren said, keep the customer aware of what just occurred, because, you know, it is your health that we're trying to protect.
There is a task in the book for dealing with if drain cleaner was used.
There you go.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, the fumes that it causes when using it. You know, that stuff's burning things in the drain. I had a couple of videos I was going to show, but you know, they're pouring this acid down a drain and it just smokes out their whole bathroom. You know, burning all that hair and everything in it. But we got to be aware of the fumes and stuff like that. But thanks again, Darren and Connie. Hazard number 4, rotating cables and attachments under torque. If a sewer cleaner uses a cable machine, he must be concerned with the proper management of the cable and attachment. If not, serious injury and possibly death may result. 4 major dangers when dealing with a continuous cable machine and rotating cable attachments. 1 is the excessive distance that you'd have between the pipe opening and the machine. Anytime you have something that's rotating, a continuous cable that you got to keep feeding in, it should always be located within 3 feet of the pipe opening. If the machine isn't located within 3 feet of the opening and precautions are not taken, a cable under torque can loop a form of a figure 8 when it loops. And if, your finger gets stuck in there, it could get severed, tendons torn, or even, a wrist or your arm broken. So it's very important to keep that snake as close as you can get it there, because it's rotating, it's spinning, and then you gotta send in more, and you end up looping it up. For some reason you gotta be more than 3 feet away. I mean, on this guy's cable here, he has like a sheath over the cable to kind of keep it from twisting on itself. So they say you could use like a dishwasher hose, those heavy duty black dishwasher hose, or a piece of pipe to kind of guide you down it to keep it from, keep that cable from spinning out. I was in like a 5-foot hole. I was still new, and we had this liner that was stuck in the pipe, and Richard was with us at that time, and he had his snake up on the top of the hole, and I was 5 feet down, and he's fishing this snake down to me from the machine. And as I was putting it into the drain, I could see, and I wasn't really thinking. I wasn't the guy running the job or whatever, but he's telling me, "Fuck, snake that drain, get it clear. We got to get that liner open." So I went and just started feeding it in there, and he's up there 5 feet, 5 feet up, and feeding me the snake, and it ends up just twisting around, my whole body. It just grabs me. And I told him that, we had to reverse it out. I had to get out, rip my shirt off, and, everybody came looking, taking pictures, ended up on the calendar. But, it was stupid. And I had snapped at him. I was like, "Bro, I told you that wasn't smart." And, then I see him. He's like, "Oh, just let me do it." He brings the cable down. I was like, "Oh, yeah, now you want to be smart about it." So always be aware of what's happening. Number 2, lightweight cloth gloves, long hair, loose clothing, and the lack of safety gear. When a cable rotates and torque builds and releases, many things are happening with it. The cable expands, the cable contracts, it gets larger, it gets smaller when it's under torque, and larger when it torque releases. So when your cable is, fully torqued down, it's at, at a crazy pinch point. What many technicians fail to realize is the loops of the cable and also opens and closes. The opening and closing of the loops of the cable creates a pinch point. If the technician is wearing cloth gloves or any type of thin, lightweight gloves, or allow his long hair to come in contact, we've all seen that, one video where that girl's got like a corn on the cob on a drill, and she goes to try and, put it to her feet and just grabs her hair and just rips her scalp back. That's something that could happen in the field. I mean, you have long hair, you're not using the proper gloves for it. So just keep it high and tight like Uncle Darren, and, get some really nice heavy duty gloves. I always like using welding gloves because, it kind of goes up your forearm a little bit, and I don't have the smallest hands. So having to use the ones that, we have at the shop. But welding gloves to me are the best to use because they're thick. You can throw them on, You're not having to do it, trying to, get them on your hands. And then the cable shooting out of the drum causing personal injury or property damage. When the electrical switch is in the forward position and the cable rotates, a left-hand wound cable tightens down, torque builds, and then the obstruction is removed. When the electrical switch is in the reverse position, a left-hand wound cable begins opening instead of torquing down. In other words, the cable is being twisted in the opposite direction or which it is wound. When enough torque is developed, the cable will release the tension, and there may be enough space in the drum or between the inner and outer drum for the cable to flip completely around when this happens. So this could also happen if you're too far out from a drain. You're snaking in and you go and try and reverse, it's going to want to, release that tension someplace. So sometimes you'll have your cable just spit out the side of your drum because, our drums are an open drum. And I know some of you've already gone through that where that cable just spits out the side of it, or, you got your head on it and, that comes shooting out. So you always got to be aware, that thing, comes shooting out, hits you in the leg or hits you in the face. You just got to be aware of what's happening. I mean, these are the types of attachments that, are on that. It's things with, saw blades, a spring, blades, stuff like that. So turning on the machine before an attachment is placed into a pipe. Placing the end of a cable in the pipe before rotation lowers the possibility of injury from attachments. Never grab the end of a cable while it's rotating to avoid injury by the attachment. At trade shows, I mean, just to know, and we all know how sharp they are. And I always voice to the boys when I see their snake out to kind of like push that blade or turn that attachment, that blade on the snake, turn it towards the wall. So if, your customer comes wiping by, it doesn't slice their leg open, or even yourself. There's a lot of things going on at that job. You're running around trying to do things and you have your snake sitting in the middle of the garage. You run by it, you slice your leg open. So try and keep, either remove your attachments off the end of your cable or, set it somewhere where nobody's going to walk into it and stuff like that. And, always being aware of, these things can go through toilets, and that's porcelain. We've seen guys snake right through them. They snake through the sides of pipes. I mean, they're not, nothing to take lightly. So this takes us into hazard number 5, which is confined spaces. And I'm going to save this for our next class because this one I took a little bit more time on preparing for, because there is a lot going on with confined spaces, that we really got to go over. But, going over what we did today.
Maybe we can go over a couple of questions regarding cabling.
Yeah.
Wall cabling and the dangers of, I'll tell you, I started on Oahu at Roto-Rooter, I want to say in like 1990 as a drain cleaner.
Oh.
It was a long time ago. So there was a guy, there was a guy who had really long hair, good surfer. And the manager kept telling him, Jamie, you got to keep your hair back. And he was just this out of control drain cleaner. One night he was on emergency service. The next day we come into the office to go do billing, and I notice he's bald. And he's got this big bandage on the back of his head. And I'm like, dude, what happened? He was like, oh man, he was cabling a drain and his hair got caught in the snake, and it wrapped him. And it wrapped him to the point where it took a chunk of his scalp out with his hair. The customer had to go unplug the machine. He was wrapped there for a while. He was screaming his head off. And it was pretty major. So, I've seen, like Josh said, guys get their shirt ripped off. I've got my hand wrapped. I'm sure everybody who's cabled the drain at some point has gotten, wrapped up somehow, some way. It's not fun, but it's something that you got to be aware of. Shit happens really, really quick out there. It happens fast, and so that's what accidents are. Tony Whitehead, he's no longer with us here, but great plumber, licensed plumber. He used to slow down his snake with his hand. For whatever reason, he had a habit. Well, one night, he's cabling a drain on emergency service. His thumb gets caught in the open drain and it rips his hand open from right about here, all the way down to the base of his palm, and stitches all the way up and down. So like I said, you're dealing with things that rotate. You're dealing with a spring. Basically, that cable is a spring, high tension, and that's how it's getting enough torque to go release a blockage in a pipe. So do not take it lightly. Anytime you're dealing with something, always have that in the back of your head and be aware that, I don't have nothing loose on me. I'm not going to position myself in a place where I could be creating a hazard or be dangerous. Make sure you're not like leaning or just have your foot pedal locked in a position. And I mean, sometimes we do dumb things where we'll lock our foot pedal so we can get more torque and tension on the end of the cable. Well, if something wraps up, you have absolutely no way to stop that machine. So be very, very mindful of what you're doing when you're out in the field. Always be safe prior to doing something.
Yeah, going back to the the videos we watched earlier. I mean, no one's trying to there's a right way to be a hero out there, and there's a stupid way of being it. Always try and be smart about the way you work. I mean, because people are gonna look at you that way. You don't want to be the crazy guy that everybody knows coming onto a job. You want to be known as this guy is the man. He knows what he's doing. And putting any you don't just make yourself look good. You make your company look good. And I mean, if the company's thriving, you're thriving. We're all doing good. So just those 4 we just went over: electrical shock, contracting diseases, chemical drain openers, and the cables. Maybe go over that in the back. I kind of went with the book a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot of things in there that you guys can read. I didn't want to just be reading the whole time. I'm not the best reader, but I hope that wasn't as too boring for everybody. We're going to try and liven it up a little bit more, but we have Ken here, we have Connie here, we have Darren here for, questions that'll come up. So this first chapter is going to have to deal with, the 7 majors. Then we're going to move into, residential plumbing, commercial plumbing and stuff like that. But we'll cover the rest of this on our next meeting next week, Tuesday. And yeah, thanks for everybody for being here today. We're going to probably jump a little early today. Well, 7:50 is probably the time we wanted to be out anyway, Connie. So we're right on time. But yeah, thank you everybody for being here today.
Does anybody have questions? Any questions? Any comments?
I do have a comment regarding the cable machine too. Know that your cable has some weight to it. And I know that doesn't happen too much on Maui where we're in a high rise, but we've had a couple of guys that didn't lock down their machines and they lost the cable. They got to the end of their cable and their cable wasn't locked into the machine, and that cable just came right out and right down the vertical on a 20-story building. Now you've got a mainline cage that's stuck somewhere in a vertical. Now you got to go deal with that. So make sure that everything's locked down and you're good to go with your machine and your equipment. Check it always. Maintenance on the machines also help tremendously. Knowing what's going on with it. You see any kinks on your mainline cable, those are potential pinch points that every time it torques up, it's going to kink right there or snap on you. So just be aware of what your equipment is and what it's doing.
Yeah, the other guys we have in here, like Jeremiah, Justin, Preston, they've all got a lot of time here. Kyoki, these are all guys you can refer to also, for things, going on out there. But yeah, that's class 1. Good job, everybody. We will see you Thursday for our normal meetings. And
good job, Josh.
Tuesday we'll go.
Thank
again.
you, Josh.
Thanks,
Josh,
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
All right.
See you on Thursday.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye.
Look at me. I'm putting on my seatbelt.